Hello and welcome back to the Real Estate Regroup Show. I am your host, LJ Walker. Today I'm going to do something a little different. I went to AI and I asked it to come up with a script regarding Dr. Martin Luther King. After all, today is the holiday in which we celebrate his birthday and we commemorate the life that he led to free many of us, okay, particularly those of us who are African American and, of course, other minorities. But little is talked about when it comes to financial equality, which is something that he definitely fought for, okay? Now, just a little background on myself. When I was born, Dr. King had already passed away. So I was sort of like on the tail end, 2 or 3 years after he had already passed. By the time I went to school, yes, the school that I went to was a predominantly black school. It was also a pro-black school. So they did teach us about Martin Luther King. They didn't just go by what was in the textbooks. They actually also shared with us their personal experiences, because many of the teachers that were in my school actually marched on Washington, and they were also heavily involved in the civil rights movement back then. Okay, so as I stated, what I'm gonna do is just react to what AI produced. Okay, so I know, and many of you all know, that Martin Luther King's home was bombed back when he in Montgomery, Alabama. Dr. King faced many different challenges with insurance. As we see today, unfortunately, that has not, uh, nothing new under the sun. It's still an issue that we all, unfortunately, have to fight through. The bombing occurred during the Montgomery bus boycott, when his home was attacked while his wife, Coretta Scott King, his daughter Yolanda, and another friend was there. Fortunately, they were not harmed. They all survived. Okay. Well, after the bombing, Dr. King initially had difficulty obtaining insurance coverage due to discriminatory practices common at that time. Yes, there was discrimination. Even if you owned a home, even if you were paying for insurance and you were African American or black, because, not all black people are African American. Some are from the Caribbean, some are from Africa. And then also the other thing is too that many people don't talk about is that other people who are placed in other races today, they were once all considered black as well. That's another story. Okay. So anyway, getting back to what AI is saying. It says many insurance companies were reluctant to provide coverage to civil rights leaders and activists, especially those who had already been targeted for violence. This was another manifestation of systematic discrimination that Dr. King was fighting against. However, Dr. King did manage to get Lloyd's of London, which is part of the British insurance market, to agree to insure his home. This was significant because Lloyd's of London was one of the few major insurers willing to take on risks that other companies wouldn't cover during this period. And I haven't looked into it, but I'm kind of wondering if they would do the same today. If you know, please drop down in the comments and share with all of us. All right. So getting back to what's written, it says that this personal experience with insurance discrimination likely contributed to Dr. King's broader understanding of how financial discrimination, whether in insurance, banking, or housing was used as a tool to maintain racial inequality, influencing his later work on economic justice issues. Further, it goes on to say that Dr. King's personal experience with insurance discrimination after the bombing deepened his understanding of how economic barriers were used to suppress civil rights. This influenced his later work in several key ways. One, in fighting for economic justice, his focus increasingly emphasized that civil rights couldn't be separated from economic rights. Later speeches and writings, he often pointed out how financial discrimination was really what maintained racial inequality, even when other forms of segregation were officially ended. The next thing, he did have what is known as the Poor People's Campaign. I'm pretty sure hopefully some of you have heard of that before. Okay, so Dr. King had launched the Poor People's Campaign, which explicitly focused on economic justice. He argued that racism was inextricably linked to economic exploitation. He often said, "What good is having the right to sit at a lunch counter if you can't afford to buy a hamburger?" The campaign addressed issues like that. And it's often been said that when he moved more to assisting poor people, that's when he became more of a threat. And they wanted to erase him, if you will. Next, he fought for access to the banking system, to fair insurance practices, to economic security, job opportunities, understanding of systematic racism. His experience helped him articulate how racism operated through seemingly neutral financial systems. In many speeches, he began explaining how practices like insurance redlining, we've heard of that. Well, no, we've heard of mortgage redlining, like real estate redlining. But he addressed insurance redlining. He addressed mortgage discrimination. He addressed banking restrictions that were used to explicitly mention race when it comes to maintaining quote unquote racial hierarchies. Memphis sanitation, he was involved with that particular strike. He went down there. That's actually where he would where he ultimately was assassinated for supporting those workers. See? His legacy is in financial rights, even though unfortunately many of us who were taught about him, they kind of left that out. But the work that he did lay the groundwork for later legislation and activism around community reinvestment, fair lending, insurance regulation reform, and anti-discrimination policies in financial services. So you have to give him credit for that. You can't deny him that. A lot of times people just focus on the nonviolent and that's it. And they don't focus on the financial. They don't focus on how what he did really woke them up when he hit them in their pockets. It's not like people had a change of heart and just all of a sudden started loving one another. And to be honest, many people still don't love one another. That's not what it is. What it is, if you want to make a change, hit them in the pocket. That's basically what it is. Anyway, continuing. Dr. King came to see that civil rights victories could be undermined if Black Americans couldn't access basic financial services like insurance, mortgages, and banking. The understanding shaped the civil rights movement evolution toward addressing economic inequality alongside legal discrimination. His own difficulty getting insurance after being bombed illustrated a cruel irony. Those most in need of insurance protection, were often those most likely to be denied it, just like today in California with the fire burnings. This personal experience helped inform his broader vision of what true equality would require, not just legal rights, but equal access to the financial systems that help build security and wealth. So, guys, that's it. What do you think about AI's summarization? I think that it did a pretty fairly decent job when it comes to connecting what happened with Martin Luther King and not only his personal trials when it comes to finance, but also his fight for equality in finance. Okay, guys? So listen, please, please, please share this amongst your friends because, as many of you know, they have been talking about getting rid of Black history. So the only way that we can actually share Black history is to do it on social media, which is what I'm doing right now. We have to educate ourselves. We can't always depend on the school system, unfortunately. Okay? Even if they don't value you, we gotta value ourselves. So that is my message for all of you. Please stay safe. Pass this amongst your friends again. Like, comment, and subscribe, and share. Remember, each one, reach one, teach one. Bye for now. Until next time, have a good night.